Welcome back to Sunrise, and thanks for staying with us as we continue this morning. Despite it being Workers' Day today, many people in South Africa still struggle with unemployment and have been dealing with it for a very long time. Not only that, but those who are employed deal with issues of salary increases, unsatisfactory working conditions, and many other unfair labor-related issues. To discuss all these things with us today, we're joined by Thembinkosi Mkalipi, who is the Chief Director of Labor Policy and Industrial Relations at the Department of Labor. Remember, you can be part of our conversation by giving us a call on 011 447 1742 or 447-2570. We're also taking your comments on our Facebook as well as Twitter pages. Good morning to you, Sam. Thanks very much for joining us right here on Sunrise.
Morning, Penny, and morning to the listeners.
As we look at today, and well, this year is Workers' Day, and I know as a department that you have a program for almost the entire month. What are the key issues that the department is looking at throughout this month, and specifically on this day?
Well, I mean, it's all issues affecting workers. The compliance with labor law, the issues of health and safety. And I mean, the bigger one is also, as you would know, we are in the process of introducing a new minimum wage for all workers in this country. And the other issue that we're looking at is amending the Labor Relations Act to deal with issues of violence and intimidation during industrial action. That package of legislation that we're introducing. But the most important thing that we involve now is to ensure what we've got in our statute is respected and implemented, and workers enjoy the benefit that they should enjoy.
What are the challenges really around compliance, you know, in the private sector versus the public sector? What are the issues that workers are dealing with?
Well, in the public sector, you're not going to have issues of compliance in terms of wages and working conditions. I mean, wages of public sectors are public and they are publicized, they are known. You don't have that problem. You've got other problem of maybe could be unfair dismissal and all those issues. In the private sector, in certain sectors, not in all sectors, especially in sectors where there's low level of organizations, trade unions, you're more likely to get high levels of abuse and non-compliance legislations. Sectors, domestic sectors like farms, sectors, I mean, in industries where there are the labor brokers and employees who are non-standard employment services. Those are
okay, so how do you make sure that you bridge that gap, that there is compliance, and then there is also an understanding of what the basic labor rights are for those workers, because most of them are entry-level industries, and if we're dealing with issues of unemployment, and most of those industries are likely to be where they have sort of like temporary work, and they're likely to turn around stuff quickly.
Well, I think our legislation, all our legislation are based on the premise that you should have strong trade unions, you should have employer organization, are based on the premise that workers will report their cases through their trade unions, and the Department of Labor will enforce the labor legislations through inspectors. Now, if that doesn't happen, if trade unions don't represent workers, it breaks one of the elements of the architect of our legislation, and you find a situation where many workers are not represented and cases are not brought forward. It's going to be very difficult for the department to have an inspector for each and every factory. I mean, there are so many factories, there are so many households that employ workers. You're not going to have an inspector, just like you're not going to have a police in each and every street in the country. The same applies with inspectors. Therefore, what we depend on is vigilant inspections and workers coming forward and reporting cases so that inspectors can take those cases forward.
So what happens in the situation where people are not, you know, organized in its industries? I mean, there's some industries, you know, when you talk about labor organization, it's a no-no. And there's challenges around issues of transformation amongst those. I mean, how does it work in those industries?
Well, I mean, those, as I've said, you still depend on workers also coming forward themselves. without being organized. They should be conducting our offices. Our offices should, in terms of the procedure and policies, be visiting factories and make unannounced visits to check on the compliance with the legislation. And that's what inspectors are expected to do.
Now, you spoke about minimum wage. Equal pay is another strong conversation that we've seen coming up in the country, and looking at what this comment is.
Our legislation deals with this issue, the issue of equal pay for work of equal value. If we produce the same work, we add the same value to the organization that we work for, there's no reason that we should be paid differently. Now, it's workers themselves who know whether they are paid differently. The law gives them tools to take up those issues. Now, if workers are not prepared to stand up and say, and ask questions, why am I being paid? The CCMA, in terms of the Labour Relations Act, is empowered to deal with these kind of cases. For people who come forward and say, we do the same job, we're being paid differently because of the color, because of race, because of gender. Because it's not only the issue of color and race, it's also gender. But that is a big problem. But unless workers themselves, if they're not using the tools that are at their disposal, the legislation that's at their disposal, to challenge these issues, this is not going to end.
So, Ntate Mkalipi, in terms of people who find themselves having to do temporary work like this gentleman is doing, or casual work, or contractual work, how do they make sure that they protect themselves and that their rights are adhered to, as Morena is asking?
Well, if you are employed to do peace job, and you are employed to do this job for more than 3 months, then the law protects you. Those workers, if they are not appointed permanently on the job that they are employed, then they should be able to go to the CCMA and put a case of unfair labor practice, because in terms of the law, after 3 months, you should be permanent. But what the law does not deal with is that the law is not going to give you a right to work for 5 days, but the law is going to give you a right to be employed permanently. You must be employed permanently, working 3 days a week. That the law doesn't deal with, but you'll be employed permanently. But if those cases arises, workers should be able to approach the CCMA. He should go to the nearest Department of Labor and report that his money is being deducted, but the money is not being paid to the UIF. And the inspectors and the UIF has got to check that issue to the company, or they can phone even the Labour Center and give the name of the company so that the inspectors can go and check this. If you are treated differently from other employees, what you need to do. The issue of allowances, it's the same different treatment. If we in the same environment, we both work in the rural areas, you get an allowance, I don't get an allowance, it's a different treatment. It's an unfair treatment that the employees should take up, as I've said, with the CCMA, because the spirit of equal pay for work equal value also apply in this case. Okay,
as we wrap our conversation, making sure that companies comply to this new minimum wage, how are you going about doing that?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a very difficult issue that we need to deal with, that all workers in this country comply with the minimum wage. The most important thing is going to be marketing the minimum wage so that everybody knows what the rate of the minimum wage. And both employers and employees, and that's what we're doing presently, meeting with companies, employers in the different sectors, indicating the implication of the minimum wage, what it is. Because for it to be implemented, you need a buy-in of the employers themselves. Then the next stage will be talking to workers so that workers should know, so that they should know what to do if they don't get paid the correct minimum wage.